Let's bring in Franco Terrazzano, the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, who was in the federal budget lockup in Ottawa today. Franco, it's been a big topic for years, the cost of living and affordability. Does this budget make things more affordable for Canadians?
No, it makes things more expensive. I mean, look, the federal government just hiked the carbon tax, driving up the cost of all the necessities of life. I mean, you know, in Ontario, the carbon tax will cost the average family in Ontario like $627 more this year than what they get back in rebates. And of course, that's from the parliamentary budget officer. But, you know, another thing that's impacting Canadians is high inflation and high interest rates. Well, if the federal government wants to help bring those things down, then they got to get their deficits and crazy debt problem under control. But we don't see that anywhere in the budget. In fact, the government is running a $40 billion deficit this year. There is no plan to balance the budget. In fact, the best that this government is willing to do is a $20 billion deficit like 5 years from now. So the spending is getting completely out of control, and the federal government has no real plan to find savings in the budget.
Franco, you've called for less spending. I mean, we watched your video online today, too. You're saying it's time for them to cut the credit card. It upsets Canadians, though. It upsets people when governments go in and they cut the programs and the services that they're expecting to have. So how do you go about doing this? How do you go about balancing the books? Well,
there is so much fat on this government stake, let me tell you. You know, the Feds spent $8 million building a barn at Rideau Hall. Okay, like they don't need to be spending $8 million building a barn at Rideau Hall. Let me give you another example. So Trudeau's trip to the Indo-Pacific region last fall cost taxpayers $2 million, a 6-day trip, including $200,000 spent on airplane food. Okay, but then let's also look at the big picture items here. Since Trudeau came to power, he's added about 100,000 new bureaucrats to the federal government. He's handed out $1 billion plus in bonuses to failing government authorities. And also, too, like, let's not forget that the federal government is raising taxes on everyday Canadians and giving out tens of billions of dollars to multinational corporations. So those are some pretty good places that the federal government should be cutting.
Just quickly here, Franco, I want to talk housing because it's out of reach for so many millennials and Gen Z in the country. The Liberals' plan surpasses the target to bring housing costs down to 2004 levels. How soon might we see a change?
Well, that's a good question. And, you know, this government budget is they try to target it to future generations. But I have to point this out. This year, the Trudeau government will have doubled the entire national federal debt since coming into the office after the 2015 election. Doubled the federal debt since then. So that's not fair to future Canadians, to Canadians' kids and grandkids. And, you know, interest charges on the federal debt this year alone will cost taxpayers more than $1 billion every single week. As you mentioned, the feds are now spending more on interest charges than they're going to be sending to the provinces in health transfers. Also, this is a crazy little fact, but every penny that you pay through the federal sales tax will be going just to cover interest on the debt. So in Canada, you pay a sales tax so that Trudeau can cover the interest charges on the federal debt.
Quite the numbers today that were released. We're going to continue breaking this down. Franco, thank you so much for joining us live tonight on Trending Now.
Hey, thanks for having me on.